Well, good Thursday morning to you. My name is Jason DaCosta, and welcome to my show. This is Consistent Preterism. And I am currently, well, it's actually Wednesday, but I'll let you in on the secret. I'm anticipating sharing this tomorrow, which is Thursday. But currently, I'm doing about 85 miles an hour on the highway, screwing up to Boston Logan Airport to fly cross country. And the reason why I'm rushing like this, pardon me, is because I slept through my early flight out of Rhode Island. So I, for whatever reason, didn't seem to set my alarm clock properly. I've only done it a billion times. And just kind of woke up. You know that feeling when you wake up and you say, shit, it's a little bit too light out. It looks a little bit too much like morning right now. And that's not a good thing because I was supposed to get up at the crack of ass. And so I missed my flight. And now I was rerouted through Boston, which is also close enough where I can make it happen, but I am currently on 95 North, heading up to good old Boston, so let's hope I make it. But in the meantime, and in between time, I was going to produce a little bit of a clickbait type audio, and that's exactly why I labeled it as I did, which is Full Preterism is Heresy and leads straight to Israel only. And I just wanted people to really kind of think on this because it kind of hit me like a long time ago, obviously. I've been saying this for a while, but it hit me even more powerfully recently when I realized, like, wow, you know, what are these full preterist so-called Christians doing, right? What in the world are they doing with their lives? Right, because we all come into full preterism at some point, right? And for the record, I would still consider myself of the full preterist perspective, right? But a full preterist, I guess by definition, would still be one that thinks the gospel is ongoing today, maybe? I don't know, maybe not. But I know that that's exactly what they believe, right? And we call them inconsistent preterists because it just doesn't work. But, yeah, so if you are a full preterist, right, or if you're considering full preterism, and you still want to be a Christian at the same time, this is your warning, okay? This is your fair warning. I sounded the alarm. I showed you the cards, so you can never blame me when it comes back on you, and you end up realizing the truth shall set you free. What I mean by that is, if you become a full preterist, your belief is that the coming of the Lord took place at the end of the age, which was the destruction of the temple, right? The disciples asked Jesus in Matthew 24, what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Same exact event, coming and end of the age. And so you do believe that Christ fulfilled what he promised. He came when he said he would. He came in that generation, and before some standing there died, he said that all these things would be fulfilled in this generation, including the destruction of the temple, and not one stone left unturned. So at the very least, we can say that it was around the time of the destruction of the temple, right? Some of the people standing there when he said what he said, supposedly at the start of his ministry, would still be alive at his coming. Paul said in his epistles, in many of them, that there would still be some left and remaining and alive by the time of the coming. So whoever he was writing to, in the days when he was writing, some of them were still going to be alive at the coming of the Lord. That's what we shall not all die means. But we shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, when the dead will be raised and the living will be changed. So we know that the dead were raised. The resurrection took place, according to Paul, before some of those to whom he was writing would die. That's an ironclad chokehold, like Khabib Nurmagomedov, the MMA fighter who looks like a bear. So that's what a full preterist is. They believe that all that stuff took place when Jesus said it would take place, and they'd be correct if they were being honest with the story, right? Because that's why we all come to full preterism. We just want to be honest. But then slowly as time passes, you run into people like myself and others out there who are starting to call some attention to the strange and mysterious fact that alongside of Jesus predicting that his coming was in that generation and before some standing there died, there is also the ironclad dagger fact that at that moment, at that time when he came for his saints, all those who belong to Christ would be raised. And all those who belong to Christ would be saved. And all those who endured to that end would be saved. And everyone who was elect would be raised. And then would come the end. Right? So full preterism seems lovely until you start realizing, oh boy, this really gets serious real quick. Because if you look at Matthew 24, 13, and 14, Jesus makes a very interesting statement here. He says, this gospel of the kingdom will go to all the world and to all nations, and then the end will come. The same end that he later on encapsulates in this generation, in the generation they were living in. So you have this statement that says all those who needed to hear the gospel, including the ones out in the nations, would get the gospel before his coming, and then would come the end. It says, he who endures to the end will be saved, which is, I believe, the very next verse in Matthew 24. So again, he who endures to the end shall be saved. You see, if the end has already come, right, if the end has already taken place when Jesus said it would, then a couple things are also cemented as being unbeatable. And that is that the gospel already went to all nations that it needed to go. It already reached all the world, and then the end came. All the elect were saved. All the ones who needed to endure to the end did endure to the end, and they were saved. There's nothing about after the end in the story. See, people think that's the case, but that isn't. In terms of salvation, in terms of the gospel, in terms of the message going out quickly, imminently, and urgently to the nations, there is absolutely nothing beyond the coming. It all ends there. And we know that coming was within that generation, before some standing there died, before those ones finished preaching through the towns of Israel. Everything was at hand. Which is why they, not us, entered into the last days. That's the whole point. So I titled this, Full Preterism is Heresy and Leads to Israel Only, just so some people could realize that, if you're listening to these full preterist continuationist pastors like Preston and Bell and Curtis and let's see who else, they're kind of dwindling, Michael Miano, Ward Fenley. If you're listening to these people and you're thinking that they're making good points about time statements and audience relevance, well, yeah, it is true. And yes, full preterism in that regard is absolutely true, right? If full preterism in that regard is not true, then you might as well just toss the story in the trash, because none of it makes any sense. Jesus failed on every single promise that he made. All the apostles and disciples failed on every promise and expectation that they were looking for. And the whole story is a joke, which it probably is most likely myth anyway, but that's another story. But the point for today's audio is that if full preterism is incorrect in its understanding of the clear and logical time statements, as well as basic common interpretation principles such as audience relevance, then the Bible is a joke. Rip it up, throw it out, because it means nothing. Right? But if full preterism is correct, and the time statements are accurate, and Jesus didn't lie, and this stuff actually took place when he said it would, and when all the apostles and disciples looked for it and thought it was going to take place in those last days, then you have a bigger problem, which means you've been cut out of the story. And I don't say that as a dick. I don't say that mean or harshly. I'm just trying to get you to realize that the two views don't go hand in hand. And clearly you're not getting out from underneath the crushing weight of time statements and audience relevance, which is full preterism. Right? I mean, that's the only logical way to do Bible. So once you realize that that's irrefutable, then you have to take the next step and look at some of these passages that say that all the elect would be saved on the last day, John 6, or Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 saying all those who are Christ would be raised at his coming, and then comes the end, the same end that Jesus just talked about in Matthew 24:14 when he said the gospel will go to all nations and then the end would come. So the gospel went to all nations, said Jesus. Paul said all those who were Christ would be gathered in, said Paul, and both of them cap it at this time of the end, right? Jesus said, this gospel will go to all nations and then the end will come. Paul said all those who were Christ would be raised at his coming and then the end would come. So his coming was the end, and the gospel had to reach all the nations before his coming, which was the end. And because it reached all nations, all those who were Christ would be raised on that last day, which was his coming. It all tucks in neatly at the end when the kingdom is delivered to God as his inheritance, and they're all ascended up into the clouds, just like the firstborn of the brethren was, changed, put on immortality, immoral, glorified, angelic, heavenly bodies, where they will forever be with the Lord. That's the whole story in a nutshell. So again, full preterism, if you're considering it, if you're like, wow, Don Preston makes some really good points. He's a great teacher. Well, he's a good teacher in regards to what he wants to teach, but he doesn't take it all the way. He doesn't take it full circle. He's not honest with the text. He's been showed these things a million times, and he blocks people, rejects their comments, ignores them, or just, if he has to engage, he plays dumb and just keeps repeating the same nonsense without addressing the cold hard facts. And he's been challenged numerous times. Michael Bradley's begging him to do a debate, and Preston just won't do it with Israel Only. He won't do it. Israel Only has become so powerful in terms of actually debating it that it doesn't even want to go with these bozos like Bobby Statzer or, these wannabes, right? Because that wouldn't prove anything. It wants to go for the top dog, Donnie K, and it wants to show everybody that it cannot be beat. And that would be a very easy task. So if Donnie Preston is interested, I'm sure Michael Bradley would still take that debate any day of the week. And it would be embarrassing. But yeah, so if you're thinking about full preterism, just be prepared. Yes, you are on the right track. You are getting closer to truth. You are not looking for a coming of the Lord in the future. That is impossible. But at the same token, all the elect and the mission and everything was going to be fulfilled at that coming. So you need to come to some pretty harsh and apparent conclusions with that. And then there's a little bit of a time where you're kind of like, ah, shit, what the hell, man? Like, my hope is gone. Like, what's going on? But then, if you're like me anyway, you realize that no, your hope isn't gone. Actually, it's quite a different outlook on things, right? If you're not in the Christian worldview, if you don't believe that all humanity is cursed and doomed and wicked and defiled and wretched, right? I mean, remember when we were Christians, for those of us who have come full circle, and we had that worldview instilled in us to think that literally all humans are created equal. And that's not a good way. That's a bad way. They're created unjust, wicked, vile, filthy, wretched sinners. I mean, talk about a gloomy view. The world is cursed. The ground is cursed. Right? I just booked a honeymoon for my wedding to a little island, and I'm looking at this resort that we're going to be staying at and the views that come with it and everything around it, and I'm just thinking to myself, kind of had one of those chuckle moments where it's like, people actually think the world is cursed, right? And a lot of Christians believe that involves the ground, right? They look at deserts. Of course they don't look at the lush, tropical, beautiful, heavenly places such as this place that can't even be described with words, right? They're just so majestic and heavenly. It just doesn't even make sense, the beauty of it. They don't look at those places, which are abundant all over the world, actually. They look at, like, the dry and thirsty desert of Texas or something, and they're like, look at this world, it's so cursed. Or they'll look at poverty-stricken regions in Africa and say, look at this world, it's so cursed. But all the while, there is a lot of beauty in the world, right? And it changes your worldview pretty radically, because now you can actually look at people as good people that are just like you, people that are human. And deep down, most of them, right? Like Luke Ryan, whatever the hell his name is, the country singer. He's got that song, Most People Are Good. He talks like that. He's a country guy. Most people are good, right? I mean, most people are good. Doesn't matter the religion, right? Most people have goodness inside of them, and you see it kind of shining through in humanity every day, actually. Every day. Usually you see something good. You see somebody do something right. You see somebody go the extra mile. You see somebody do the right thing. You see somebody compliment someone. You see somebody help somebody with a bag. You see somebody hold a door for somebody. I mean, when you start looking at the good in humanity, it kind of like shifts your focus from, wow, everybody's not wicked, defiled, and wretched. So that's what this transition has done for me, and it's allowed me to enjoy life and enjoy the gift of life and enjoy what God has given me here and now. And it's not so much about, oh, I got to get off this earth, right? I got to get out of here. It's about enjoying what whoever God is has given me, and enjoying the time I have here, the family I have, the friends I have, looking at people with a positive lens rather than always a negative lens. Oh, a dead turtle on the side of the road. I hate seeing that. But anyways, that's pretty much my rant, okay? If you're thinking of full preterism, be prepared, because if you're honest, it's going to lead you smack dab to Israel only, or at the very least, it'll lead you to the conclusion that salvation ended at the coming, which was when the temple fell. And in that time frame, that was the end of the age. So it's going to lead you to that conclusion, and you're going to realize that it doesn't really make sense to have a gospel today when the gospel was good news that Christ was the end of the law to those who believed, right? And if the law passed away every jot and tittle, and if only Israel had it, that makes things a little difficult for today, doesn't it? So no, you're not under a law. You're not obeying the 9 commandments because, of course, you don't keep the Sabbath. No, there's nothing like that. This was Israel's story from cover to cover. And when the Savior came for them, all Israel would be saved. So just giving you the forewarning. I'll see you here soon at Israel Only. Hopefully my title caused you to click on this audio, thinking that maybe I was somebody bashing full preterism and you just want it to go away so bad, but you know it's true. Well, this one was for you. So take some time, study it. Eventually come around to the truth of Israel only, and that all was fulfilled, and that the borders are up. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you agree with Israel only or not. It doesn't matter if you think all the Gentiles that were elect in the New Testament last days, if those were Israelites or if they were pagan. It doesn't matter, because all of them were saved by the coming. The gospel went to all nations, and then the end came. The fullness of the Gentiles came in, and all Israel was saved. Everything wrapped up at the coming of the Lord, which was in that generation. Anyways, that's all I got for you today, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful Thursday, and we'll be back another day, another time, another place, and another rhyme. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.